Hello and welcome to today's video. This is my October wrap up. I am going to do this really quick. I'm going to tell you the basics. I'm going to give you my very quick thoughts on each of the books that I've read this month. I'll tell you a few statistics, but to be honest, we're not really going to get into anything during this wrap up. Like, I'm not going to dive too deeply. A lot of the books that I read during October were part of a series, so I can't talk about them too much. And to be honest, it's the 11th right now. I'm hoping to get this out today or tomorrow, so hopefully you'll be seeing this on the 11th or the 12th. But it is only 4:45 and it is so dark outside. Like, I'm having to use like the big overhead light, and I just feel like a little bit cozier, a little bit easier of a time to wrap up is what is required. So during October I read a total of 11 books, and that totaled 5,115 pages. Those are both amounts that I'm really happy with. I will be recalculating how many books I read on average at the end of this year, because I do think it's increased. Previous to this year I thought 8 was my average amount that I read per month, but I do think it's probably closer to 10. So yeah, this is kind of average for me now, but I'm really happy with what I read, and I feel like I made a lot of progress with goals and with things that I wanted to work on in October. When it comes to the statistics, I read 54.5% fantasy romance, followed by 18.2% fantasy and 18.2% romance, and then 9.1% non-fiction. I read books in a variety of ways. My average star rating for the month was 3.77 stars, so a fairly decent star rating. I would like for my average to be around 4, so it's not too far below that. And yeah, I've read mainly new adult with a few adult books and a couple of YA books, and all but one of the books that I read during this month were a part of a series. We only had one standalone in there. Yeah, there's a few other bits and bobs that I could say, but to be perfectly honest, it's sort of random statistics, and I'm going to be filming my Q3 statistics very soon, so it doesn't feel as necessary to do. So let's just go through the actual books that were read. First up, I read BFFs, The Radical Potential of Female Friendship. This is a little non-fiction in the Inklings 404 series that I have been wanting to read for a while, and it filled the buzzword prompt for October, so October was just the perfect time to read it. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was a really good non-fiction. My main problem with it wasn't actually any problem with the book. I just think the subtitle of the book gave a different impression for what you're going to get. So it does say The Radical Potential of Female Friendship, and nothing in this book was very radical, and because of that I just felt like what I thought I was getting out of the book wasn't quite what I did get, so I gave it 4.5. I think if you go into it knowing that it's not actually going to be like these radical takes, it's just going to be a really interesting conversation and thoughts and like look into female friendships, I think it could 100% be a 5-star non-fiction for someone else if you just go in with the right expectations. But yeah, unfortunately that like subtitle did really mislead me for what I thought I was getting. I thought it was really good non-fiction. I really enjoyed the conversations that were had in there, and I found the book itself really interesting. I have wrote down 2 quotes, so these obviously stuck with me, so let's read them. We have a tendency in our society to assign female friendships to childhood, and once we are past that point there exist very few public structures in which to contain or mediate them. Yeah, I agree with that, and I do think, yeah, I think I highlighted that one because it was kind of like the starting point to a bigger conversation. And then the other one that I highlighted is friendship is and has always been a physical proposition, a corporeal act that occurs between people, their bodies and desires, and tangible quotidian realities. And then there was a bit more, and then it went on to say the idea of physical intimacy amongst friends is not taboo precisely, but it is perhaps the least understood form of platonic affection, because such intimacy still doggedly belongs to the realm of romantic and sexual relationships. And I just thought it was something so interesting to think about, like the actual physical touch and like the physicalities of friendship and how they can be interpreted. And yeah, as you can tell, it was a book that just made me think a lot, and yeah, it was really interesting. I would definitely recommend it. Next up, I read The Raven Boys. This is one that I've wanted to read for a while, and I'm really glad that I did. I gave it 4 stars, and it's one of those where I'm like, if I would have read it when I was younger, it probably would have been like an absolute obsession, but I still really enjoyed it even reading it as an adult. I found the dynamics of the gang and the friendships and how it all worked out really fun. There were twists that I did not see coming, and throughout it all I was really enjoying it. I was enjoying the mystery, I was enjoying like how we were solving it and how it was like quite a contemporary setting, but with like just these little magical things sprinkled in that made it into the fantasy it is. I was just really happy, I was really content. I thought it really wrapped itself up in a very nice way for like the first book in a series. Like could have left it as a standalone until the last few chapters, and the last few chapters of this book had a twist that I just did not see coming. I didn't understand, and I feel like twist is a bit unfair to say. It wasn't like a proper twist as it completely changed anything, but it was definitely a big reveal of something that I hadn't even given much thought to, but once this was revealed it was a lot, and because of that I will definitely be picking up in the next book. Okay, and then after that I read 4 different Zodiac Academy books. I will tell you my star ratings and a quick thought of each of them, but the very basics for Zodiac Academy is I really enjoy them, and I really enjoy the main books in the series, but the additional books that they are I kind of don't get much out of. So I read Heartless Sky, which I gave 4 stars. I enjoyed it, but it took me a very long time to read. I'd actually been reading this one for like 4 or 5 months. It did definitely take me a long time to read it. I was frustrated, I was mad, I was angry, but like the fact that it made me feel so much for so many characters, like I actually take that as a really good sign, because like it's not very often that you actually get angry and you're actually annoyed with characters. Like it's built it up for a long time to make you actually care about these characters enough to feel those things. So yeah, really enjoyed. Then I read Foxy Tales. I gave this 3 stars. It was fine. It was basically a load of alternative point of views from earlier books in the series. I enjoyed a couple of them. Yeah, so basically I enjoyed 2 of them, which were from a particular character's point of view. I did not like 2 of them that were from a character's point of view I just don't care about. And then the 5th and final one of them was from like a completely different series that I've never read before. So I just was very confused and didn't really understand, and I'm still not really sure if that series does tie into Zodiac Academy at all, or if it was just like a random one. I really don't know. Then I read Sorrow and Starlight, and I gave it 5 stars. It was definitely my favourite book of the month and potentially of the series. I'm not confident that it's my favourite book of the series, but it's definitely my favourite book of the month. The emotions in this were just great. We had so much to look at, so many different things going on. Like Zodiac Academy definitely has main characters, but I would say the further into the series you get, it is more of like an ensemble cast, and it was really interesting. There was a lot going on, a lot of different things to follow, and a lot of different things that, because you're seeing all the perspectives, you maybe put things together a little bit quicker. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It feels like we made not too much progress, but we made progress in things that mattered to set up for what will be the final book of the series. So then I also read Beyond the Veil, which is book like 8.5, so I think it's worth reading. I have seen online a lot of people don't care for it, and a lot of people read it at the same time as the previous book. I'm really glad that I read it after book 8 and read it as its own thing. I really enjoyed it. I found it really fun, and to be honest, like I don't think it added too much to the plot, except for like one thing that like really needs to be dealt with and looked at in the next book. But it was just a lot of characters that we haven't properly seen before. This takes place in a completely different place. I'm trying to say as little as possible without spoiling it. And like it's characters that we know of but don't really know, and really got to know them. There's a lot of sweet sections, and honestly there was a couple of chapters that we saw things that had happened in the previous book from a very different perspective, and the humour and the fun in those chapters alone made it worth the read for me. And I don't know if I said, but I gave that 4.5 stars. Then I read Only When It's Us. This is a contemporary romance, and I gave it 3 stars. I do think that potentially on a reread, because I do think it's a series I would reread, I would potentially give it higher. My main reason that I don't think I enjoyed this one is the amount of football talk, or like soccer talk, because it's in America. Me and sports just don't go together, but even with that in, like it didn't frustrate me, it just kind of like glossed over me when it got into like the really football-y bits. But it was really good. I also removed a half a star from it. Like I probably would have given it 3.5 stars, but I removed half a star because there were some references to a popular fantasy series in there that I don't think were necessary. This popular fantasy series has a very negative author who we just don't speak about, who we just ignore and pretend doesn't exist, and hasn't ruined everyone's childhoods of reading fantasy and not being able to look at it the same. So to have a book mention it so much, it really took me out of it, really took me back, and like it made me look up whilst reading when this book was published, and it was published in 2020, so I really don't see any excuse. So I did remove half a star for that as well. I really enjoyed the actual relationship in this. I enjoyed our two characters and how they worked together, and like how it like slowly progressed, and there was more to it than just this relationship. They both had stuff going on in their lives. I also really enjoyed the representation. I thought the deaf representation especially was really, really good, and the actual talk surrounding communication and comfortableness and like wanting and having that be a choice, I really, really, really enjoyed. So yeah, that was that one. Then I felt myself being in a romance mood, but I'm not good at like knowing what romance books I will enjoy. So unfortunately we have a few flops, and the next book that I read was unfortunately a flop. It was Fair Catch. I gave it 2 stars because it's like, I can see that like people could enjoy it. It definitely wasn't for me, but I can see how other people could enjoy it. I don't know, this was one that was like American football, but I think because I've dealt with the like football in the book previous, I thought, oh, like I can definitely like just ignore that fact, but I didn't enjoy it. Being honest, like it was just not for me. I don't have anything positive to say about it, to be honest. I'm sure that there's great reviews out there for this. I am very new to romance and I'm still learning what I like, and this was not one, so that's all I'm really gonna say. And then because I was like, oh no, like I can't do the romance thing, I can't figure out what I like I just want to be reading, I ended up picking up a fantasy romance series. The first book in the series is Bonded by Thorns. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was a really promising first book, but I did think it was doing a lot of things that I'd seen before. It is like a retelling, like a reimagining of Beauty and the Beast, and that was very, very prevalent in this one. I had fun with it. I thought it was a really good setup, but unfortunately it did mostly feel like a setup. And I'm also not really sure how everything works in this world. It's got like I can't remember what they call it, but it's essentially like a fated mate situation. I think there's an actual word for it in this world, but it's essentially fated mates. But I'm still at the end of this one quite confused as to how that's going to work and what's going on with it. I really enjoyed the world, and I hope that we continue to get to see more in the world, and I will leave it at that for now, because the next book I have to talk about is Woven by Gold, which is the second book in the series. This got 3.5 stars, and I was hoping it would get more. I thought, giving the first book in the series 3 stars, I thought like the series really had potential, and that like I would come to love and love the books more and more as we went on. But unfortunately, like it was a little bit better than the first one, but again, I just don't really feel like I know the characters, and I don't really feel like I understand our main character's motivations at all. It feels very insta-lovey. I don't know, it's definitely adult writing, but it feels like a YA plot. And I don't know, like I really enjoyed seeing more of the world. I do really like this world. We got to see a different like court in the world, and also we got to see like the below of the world, so it was interesting in that sense. And I'm intrigued enough, like I was listening to these via audio. I'm sure at some point I will continue on with the series and at least give the next book a try. I believe it's a completed series, and I believe there's only 4 books out in it, so like I am halfway through. I'm just a bit worried that it's not going to get better, and I don't really personally want to just read 3-star books. I would prefer to enjoy the books I read a lot more. Like 3 stars to me is like completely middle of the road, like could take it, could leave it. I just don't really have any strong feelings about it. And then the final book that I read of the month, because to be perfectly honest, I was feeling very negative about my reading. I was feeling like it was really going down. I did not want to get into a slump, so I did a reread, and I reread Fire. by Kristen Cashore. This is the second book in the Graceling Realm series. I reread Graceling earlier in the year. I can link that up above. Me and Jay read it together and did like a little live show on it. But yeah, I reread Fire. Really glad that I reread it. There was so much in it I forgot about, and I had a really fun time. This is definitely still 5 stars on a reread, and I will like preempt that to say, like, I think this is a 5-star YA fantasy series. Like, I don't think it's as popular as a lot of other books, but I think, like, if you enjoyed the Red Queen series, if you enjoyed the Lunar Chronicles, if you enjoyed like Morganville Vampires, like those sort of like quite popular YA fantasy series that I do think are a lot of people's favourites, I think this stands up the same amount, and I've really enjoyed it and had a lot of fun. We saw a very different part of the world than we do in the first one. It's definitely book 2. I definitely think you need to read it second, but it does take place before book 1, and I just found it so interesting. And I remember reading it the first time and not picking up on a lot of things, and rereading it the second time and like realising what's going on in multiple places that I hadn't done when I first read it a few years ago. It was so good and so satisfying, and I really had a great time. I would highly recommend it. It was really nice to end the month on a 5-star. So yeah, those are all of the books that I read during October, and I'm relatively happy with it. I'm going into November. We're actually already at the 11th, so I'm feeling good about my reading in November so far. I really went into November with a very positive mindset because I finished in October on a high, and I do think that potentially ending a month on like a reread of a book that I really love is potentially something I want to continue going forward, like make an actual habit of it, because it really did put me in a good mood and it really set my November off to a good start. So yeah, those are all the books I read. I hope that you enjoyed this. I know it was a bit shorter and I didn't talk in depth about the books quite as much. Just none of them really felt like I could, to be honest. But I hope you enjoyed the video anyway. Please do give it a like if you liked it, subscribe down below if you like to see more content like this, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye.